Good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching DayBreak on this 20th day of April 2025. Jeffrey Wandeto is the Member of Parliament for Tetu constituency. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, viewers.
Nelson Koech is the Member of Parliament for Belgut constituency. He is also the chairperson of the Defence, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Kenyans.
He just came back from China. He'll be telling us what he matters from there. Anthony Kibagend is the Member of Parliament for Kitutu Churches South constituency. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam, and good morning, Kenyans.
He also came back from somewhere. Where were you?
Somewhere.
No. There's a place. I saw some pictures somewhere. Which city was that?
It was a private visit.
Which city was that?
UAE.
UAE. Yes. Okay, karibu sana.
Yeah.
He is a country. Mheshimiwa Jane Kagiri, Member of Parliament for Laikipia constituency. Good morning.
Laikipia County. Good morning.
Okay.
Sam, and good morning, Kenyans.
Yeah.
And I just came back from Laikipia, in case you want to ask.
Okay. Mileage imeingia.
Itaingia.
Okay, all right. Now, this morning, the papers, 5 billion shilling a day debt stress for Ruto is the main story in the Daily Nation, talking about Kenya will this year pay 1.8 trillion shillings, over half of the country's budget to its creditors, highlighting the growing burden of debt that has spiraled to 11 trillion shillings. And of course, they're giving the numbers ahead, as I had indicated earlier, from Mwai Kibaki, who left the country at 1.9 trillion shillings of debt. Uhuru Kenyatta left the country at 8.6 trillion shillings. William Ruto, 2.5 years later, is at 11 trillion shillings. And of course, this remains a big challenge for the government to finance programs, but also to continue servicing debt, and also informs the future of management of public affairs and the state of the economy. The president was in China last week and later headed to Rome for the funeral of the late Pope Francis. We'll be talking about the deals made in China. UDS tax evasion is the main story on the Standard, talking about, this is former SG, Cleophas Malala, who claims that the party has now been remitting resources or funds deducted for housing levy and pay-as-you-earn taxes on employees. Last year, these tax issues sparked protests by Gen Z, to which the government responded with excessive brutality. Is the country being governed by two sets of rules reminiscent of George Orwell's famous novel, where some animals are more equal than others? Is a question the Standard is asking this morning. But also this week is an important one, because the ABC selection panel will be retreating, or has retreated, to go and analyze the interviews they conducted of 100 applicants for the commissioner jobs and 11 candidates for the position of chair. They were interviewed, and now it's time for the panel to come up with names. 11 names in total, 2 for chairperson, 9 for members of the commission, and there are certain qualities they'll be looking at. But first, I want us to talk about something that has been happening in the political space. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta spoke while in Uganda last week, and he was rallying the young people to take up their place in the political space, saying that they are the ones who can save the countries of East Africa. Watch.
You, our young people, will have to play your part in reshaping the destinies of our countries of birth, and you will help us realize that this is the moment for each and every one of you to step onto the stage. Your time has come.
Now, some political leaders have not been very happy, not comfortable actually, with what the former president is saying. They've been speaking. Watch what they've been saying.
It is under your watch ya kwamba kulikuwa na betting companies zikapewa licenses betting company 200. Wacha ku-criticize wakati wewe mwenyewe ndio umekosa. Wewe mwenyewe uko uongozi ndio umekosa.
Ukiwa retired as an MP, as a president, as an MCA, toa mdomo kwa wale ambao wako.
Alimteua mzee Mudi Yaori akiwa na miaka 91 kuwa chairman ya Sports Fund, akisema anapenda vijana. Ule ndio unafisi ambaye inafanya Yesu awezi akarudi saa hii mpaka ule mzee ya zamani Uhuru Kenyatta abadilishe mawazo yake.
Suddenly umekuwa very clever na umekuwa malaika haraka. Sasa wewe ndio unatupatia lecture kusema fanyeni maandamano, pigeni serikali. Na jana ulikuwa hapa, hata miguu yenye hata ile penye ulikanyaka ukitoka mlango ya State House haijakauka.
Mheshimiwa Koech, what is the fury about now? Because, I mean, isn't everyone free to speak their mind?
Well, the Constitution has provided that liberty for people to speak, which is perfectly okay. But now when it comes to the former head of state, in my view, Uhuru Kenyatta has never recovered from William Ruto's win. He's still, he's still very upset, the fact that William Ruto is the president of this country. And he's very uncomfortable with it. By the way, if it was for Uhuru Kenyatta to decide if William Ruto should continue being the president, he'd probably collapse this country just for the sake of William Ruto going down. And that is why this is not the first time.
Why would you say that?
This is not the first time he's urging the youth to stand up. He actually did it immediately after the Gen Z demonstration. And it is not genuine because, as a former head of state, we should evaluate and look at his past. Did he give space to the young people of this country to thrive during his tenure? He did not. Look at his cabinet, for instance, and tell me how many in his cabinet were young people. There was one or probably none at all. Look at the other sectors of our economy. We had given an opportunity to the young people of this country. Look at what happened during his tenure. Many young people who spoke were either murdered and dumped in Rivayala, and many bad things happened to the young people of this country. For Uhuru Kenyatta today,
you know that for a fact.
Is it not an issue that so many people?
You know that for a fact that people who spoke during his tenure were killed.
That should have been the case. It is still an issue to date. And
I'm asking, people that spoke against the government were killed. You know that for a fact?
Yes, for a fact, yes.
What action
Many people were silent. Many people were silent. Look, let me not even use example, outside example. Let me use myself as a real example. President Uhuru Kenyatta moved us and shuffled many of us who were in the committees. Do you know, in the sports committee in the last parliament, we were out of the 21 members of that committee, we were 11 members from the Kalenjin community in that particular sports committee. So many things happened for people who were spoken at that time. So let me tell you.
That was Uhuru's doing.
That was Uhuru Kenyatta, of course. So let me tell you this. Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be the voice of the young people. Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be the one telling the young people to stand up for their space. The young people, not just in Kenya, globally, know their space. They speak out their issues. They don't need to be incentivized by former president. So in my view, the former president is just being a sore loser. He is still terribly hurting. And that is why every moment that he is able to speak on a podium...
Sore loser. Now, let me just take you back to what you said, that during his reign, people that spoke against the government were killed. And you know that for a fact. What has the government done to correct that and to prosecute those responsible, including the former president, if you like?
So many things are happening, Sam. First of all, you must have the investigation watertight. When the president came in, you remember that he disbanded the team that used to do that execution. Some of the team that we are told were based in police, in Nairobi area police headquarters. Some of these things are still under investigation.
But they are known.
Amid quietly, that probably it is not publicized. But so many things are happening. There are murders that were executed that have never, ever been known how it was done. And those happened during the Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. Yep. So Uhuru Kenyatta did not allow the young people of this country to speak. Never. Many times they were bullied. Remember, Sam, I don't know why Kenyans forget very quickly. Do you remember even, what was it called? The BBI, Building Bridges Initiative. Do you remember it was conducted in the counties? So many things people were bullied, many things were run through, and certain proposals that were not very popular were made sure that they were on the table. So Uhuru Kenyatta...
Which was defeated at the courts.
Which were defeated at the courts. Because he bullied his way, because he wanted his way, and that is exactly what Uhuru Kenyatta was. He was a dictator. Many people did not realize. He cannibalized parties, political parties, because he wanted to rule. So he cannot be the voice today that is telling the young people of this country to speak. He did not allow them to thrive during his tenure.
So when he's called to conferences, he should keep quiet?
He should not keep quiet. There's a way former heads of state handle themselves. Look for instance, Kibaki, how he handled himself when he retired. Kibaki became a counselor, sort of, and an advisor to the President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is exactly how you should carry yourself. Not permanently being seen to be, seeming to be inciting and giving very populist statements that, in effect, are extremely dangerous.
All right. Mheshimiwa Kibagendi, do you agree that the former president is speaking because he's a sore loser?
Absolutely not. And I don't find fault in what President Uhuru Kenyatta has been doing, encouraging young people to step up, not just in the political front, but across the board, in business, innovation, and even in sport. And that is what he has done across the continent. Why he gets invitations to speak is because of his outstanding performance in trying to transform this country. You know, we have a government in power that lacks legitimacy. So any little thing provokes those who are extreme beneficiaries of the oppressive regime. That is why you see my brother here, Honorable Nelson Koech, is aggrieved. Honorable Soro and all the others you saw yesterday and over the weekend are unhappy when the former president reminds Kenyans that, hey, you need to step up in every other field. For them, they only think that he's inciting young people to get into politics and to push this regime out of power. They know Kenyans don't like this government. There is no government that has been unpopular like this government is. And I can tell you...
Do you want to define what oppressive regime is?
Oppressive in the sense that, I was getting to that, when Honorable Koech here tells us that there are people who are killed and thrown into River Yala, the most recent is what we have been seeing. And the government confessed, the president confessed, whereby we've seen young people get killed. We've seen young people get abducted in broad daylight. We've seen disappearances. What can you tell us about that? We had over and today, sorry to say, I have to mention this. I know it's a different media house, but BBC will be releasing a documentary on how many Kenyans were killed and how many have disappeared in just a short period of 2 years. Remember, in 2023, during the finance bill debate, sometime between April and July, we had massive killings in especially Kisumu and Kisii. I believe you remember that. But most of us are trying to remember what happened last year. So when President Uhuru Kenyatta steps up and speaks and encourages young people to step up to the plate in various fields, the current regime and the beneficiaries of this oppression and the schemes that are organized to benefit just a few get angry that people are getting informed. That is what makes these people get the kind of anger we are seeing. And you know, Kenya is in a political crisis whereby this government is hanging on a thread, or the president is clutching on straws. Why? Because at one point, Kenyans almost brought down this government. But they keep giving excuses. It is the former deputy president. Sorry. There were interferences from organizations that they later came to start praising, like the Ford Foundation and all that. Yet, really, the issue in this country is incompetency all the way from the top. And that has come, and it is affecting service delivery. Service delivery has made young people begin agitating. And by agitating, these people in government are feeling threatened. And what I've seen from what young people, especially in Kenya, have decided is that we will wait for these people and deal with them in the ballot. Because the way they wanted it to happen was unconstitutional. And when they tried to push it, they were killed, and we know. So don't give us excuses that people are thrown in River Yala and what have you. And what did President William Ruto do then? He was in government. He was sitting in the Security Council. He should have been able to speak up. He never did. So don't give us those excuses.
All right.
Don't scapegoat. President Uhuru Kenyatta has no fault in encouraging young people to to step up. And I also encourage young people, go get your IDs, go register as voters. We have to get this regime out of power.
Now, Mheshimiwa Jane Kagiri, Uhuru Kenyatta is quoted as saying you have the numbers, you have the time, and you have the energy to get involved and stay involved in governance discussions until you effect the changes you wish to see. He's also saying young leaders should embrace merit-based governance where policies serve long-term national interests. Another one, he's saying that no one is coming to save us, and as the world turns increasingly inward, the places to seek refuge are rapidly disappearing. What is the biggest problem with that?
Thanks, Sam. Sam, yesterday was the climax of the Youth Week in the PCA churches, and I attended a few of those churches, and my message to the young people was to speak up and take their positions in the society. So for that part, I would not say the former president has a problem or a mistake in saying that. However, for me, what disturbs me is why speak up when you have left? Yet when you were there, we would have expected you to speak up. I'm looking at the first page of the Daily Nation today. And if you remember some in our graph lessons in school, you just look at the gap between each graph. And the gap between His Excellency Mwai Kibaki and His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta speaks a lot for itself. We moved from 1.9 trillion to 8.6 trillion. That's an increase by 6.7 trillion. So when he's telling the young people to speak up, I would appreciate if he also added that they can do better than we all did. Because in his particular case, like now you'll hear what the greatest question I get from my constituents is, Jane, where is the money in this country? And I have to sit down with them, explain to them that we are so debt-ridden that we have to first sort out the debts that we have as a country. So even whatever is getting collected from our taxes goes into paying. And I even give them better examples of telling them, even in your own household, when you are in debt, you cut on so many things. So that is exactly what is happening to our country. So when the former president stands up and tells the young people to speak up, he's telling them to speak up in a good way, but he should also explain to them the crisis we are in are partly contributed by some of us who have been there, including himself. So those are that's the genuineness I'm seeking for, even as we tell young people to speak up. Me, as Jane Kagiri, when I tell my young people to speak up, I'm telling them, also correct me where you see where I have done wrong. But let's not try and make ourselves look good and the other person look bad on the assumption that it is them who got us where we are today. I'll give you the second example, Sam. The last time I was on this show and we were discussing the president's visit, you remember me highlighting a lot about the insecurity in Laikipia County. So many of our young people are killed in his regime because of insecurity. Citizen kept bringing it here on TV. What action did he take? So when you're telling young people, speak up, please also apologize for the mistakes you did to our people. You should have stood up, given us the security that we were speaking about that day, but he didn't. So today when you come up and say things are wrong in this country, at least for Laikipia I can say our security has been restored.
Because the government is now delivering on what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
Now, you referenced the figures on the front page of the Daily Nation. What is the point?
No, I said, as he's telling us to speak up, let's also look at how the debt increased in his regime. From 1.9 trillion in Kibaki's regime, we moved to 8.6 trillion in Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. That said...
And from Uhuru Kenyatta?
And from Uhuru Kenyatta's regime to William Ruto's regime, we are at 11 trillion. That's an increment of around 2.4 trillion.
So is that good or bad?
Of course, Sam, for any country, we don't want to be in debt. We'd all hope for us to get down.
I'm asking that because, as you reference those figures, you realize that Uhuru Kenyatta accumulated debt of 0.7 trillion shillings per year. William Ruto has accumulated 0.96 trillion shillings per year. On the number line, William Ruto is accumulating at a faster rate.
And that's why some we're all in agreement. We have to speak up. Now we have to also tell our regime that we need to check on these numbers because we need to bring them down instead of allowing them to keep going up. But we cannot wait until 2032. This is one of the platforms. Even I am now made aware. To be frank, I was not aware that's what...
Shirley Mheshimiwa, you sit in the budget committee.
Sam, I keep correcting you. This is my last week was my second meeting in the budget committee, so I can't carry the problems of all that has been in budget committee.
Of that. I'm just wondering.
And then I also need to tell you, this is the first time...
TV is the first platform.
This is the first time a Laikipian is sitting in the budget committee since independence.
Surely.
So that one I have to take pride in.
Congratulations for
those
that.
Are some of the milestones this regime is taking up.
It's really good to hear that, good to learn that rather. But you sit in the budget committee. It cannot be that this is the only opportunity you have.
Frankly, this is the, no, this is not the only opportunity. What I'm saying is, it is not that I have started interacting.
Okay.
And I like admitting what I have done and what I haven't done.
Okay.
So
right.
that one, I admit I haven't.
Oh, all right. Now, Mheshimiwa Ndeto, leadership is about service, then responsibility and being accountable to the people. And yes, there is pertinent issues that during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, there are certain things that didn't go right. But when you hear leaders who sit in parliament, they are your colleagues in parliament, one of them is also a cabinet secretary, sits in the cabinet, fighting and attacking a former head of state and forgetting what the message is, what are Kenyans supposed to do with their leaders?
Yeah, Sam, I think what we saw over the weekend is very sad. And we have seen an extension of that, from the words that my neighbor here, Nelson, has uttered this morning. First of all, Uhuru Kenyatta is a former head of state. He's also an elder now and a statesman. And a father, I think a grandfather also. And he's playing all those roles together. So whenever he stands and urges young people to take charge of their country, and you remember he did that at a funeral in Kiambu a few months ago, and now in Uganda last week. When he stands up to urge the youth to take charge of their destiny, it is the same thing that all these leaders, whenever we go to Mashinani and we have those forums of the youth, we are all urging our young people, please take charge of your destiny, because we know in this country we've always accused young people of this, of that, and it's time that they start now being in charge. Last year was a very, very important year for the youth in this country. For the first time, we saw a movement led by young people, armed only with a phone, a flag, and a bottle of water. And how did we respond to them? We responded to them with tanks. We responded to them with armored personnel vehicles. And all they were demanding for is good governance in this country. So I think when you hear the sort of reactions that we see happening today, it is an indicator, just like Kibagedi has said, of a government that now is feeling so threatened. You saw actually a few weeks ago, this government feeling threatened by a bunch of young girls in Nakuru. A bunch of very young schoolgirls. All they were armed with is school uniform and a few words, which resonated very well with Kenyans who feel that this country is actually headed the wrong direction. So personally, from where I sit, I echo the words of Uhuru Kenyatta, and I would also like to urge our youth, it is time, first of all, they should register as voters. We've been urging them to register as voters because the people who are going to change this country going forward, it is our young people. So when the leaders are here, bastardizing the former head of state, it is actually a self-indictment that from where we sit, or from where they sit, this regime has lost it. This regime no longer resonates with the youth. And if you ask the average youth out there to compare the regimes, you can do a simple poll, even in this station, just to ask them, how do you compare this regime and that regime? Look at the sort of opposition, look at the sort of the daily noises that this regime is facing. And instead of us introspecting and asking ourselves, and I'm saying this as a member of UDA, who sometimes feels very hurt to see that a party that we built, that we worked so hard on, now is like the enemy, all is, it's really the enemy of every Kenyan.
There's no solution out of this because there are challenges.
There are solutions, but the first solution is to stop this sort of, a reactive thing, is to say, what are our youth asking about? 35% of our youth who are eligible for jobs are actually out of work, okay? Our university funding model, which is what is supposed to shape the future of this country, is actually in tatters. The CBC curriculum, right now we cannot even agree on even all the basic things of, how the senior school is going to be. People are still waiting for guidelines. Some, I can tell you today, the ministry has not even released guidelines on how JSS laboratories are supposed to be built and equipped. Yet, it's been 3 years, Now we have grade 9 of JSS, okay? If you look at, the things like the public health, there are so many issues. So instead of us addressing the issues, what we are doing is every day coming out with tanks, with harsh words, with all the things to defend and basically try and repress the youth. So it is time that our UDA government started listening to Kenyans. And I think that's all our Gen Zs were saying last year. That is what the Butere girls' children were telling us. And that is what we should be telling ourselves this morning as leaders who are aligned to UDA, that it is time we start listening to our people. Otherwise, our government is going to lose very early in the morning on August 2027.
Would you have a problem with that?
Well, these are self-inflicted wounds, but we have a chance to redeem ourselves.
Would you have a problem with your government losing?
Of course, I would have a problem with that, but I would also be very happy if we got a better government.
No, what are you saying? You said something very interesting, that the Butere girls were armed in a school uniform in a few words. Let's take a break on that.
And we came out with tear gas and all manner of things and guns.
When we come back, we'll be looking for solutions out of this, because it looks like beneath the disagreement, there's something sensible that is coming out of all these conversations. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching DayBreak on this 20th day of April 2025. I'm here with Geoffrey Wandeto, Nelson Koech, Anthony Kibagende, and Jen Kagiri. And before we took the break, we were talking about the statement by President Uhuru Kenyatta, former, and the reactions that have come from members of the Kenya Kwanza administration, including CS Kipchumba Murkomen, who accuses the former president of insincerity, saying that the challenges the country faces can easily be traced to the regime of Uhuru Kenyatta, even saying that the footsteps at State House are still there. You can actually find them before he left. Azija Kauka, I'm told. Mheshimiwa Koech, you also took issue with the former president on what he said towards the Gen Z demonstrations last year. Why?
I'm saying that some of his statements were very insincere. It's not that to say that President Uhuru Kenyatta cannot speak. And I'm perfectly in agreement that he can speak whatever he wants to speak. But as a former head of state, I said, let us use the time that he was in office. Let us evaluate the time that he was in office and see if what he's speaking now, did he walk the talk? That is my point. And in my view, and you know it just like I do, that President Kenyatta never supported William Ruto. And he will wish that William Ruto fails. In fact, when we came in, there was a talk in town that, our government was not going to last more than 6 months. Now that things seem to be looking up, and let me use
what Who said that? Who said the government will not survive?
There was talk that, whispers that Uhuru Kenyatta actually had told most of his guys, Kina Matiang'i, that, this government won't last more than 6 months. It has lasted. And I want to look at it this way, Sam.
Now, because
I want to look at it this way.
There's no owner of the rumor.
Yeah, I don't want to lose my point. Let me say this.
Yeah.
If you want to look at this administration, let us not only evaluate it on the statements that are made, populist statements that are made outside there. Just last week, we overtook Ethiopia as a strong economy in the region. You look at how we have been able to deal with our debt burden. Mm-hmm. Have we failed in our debt repayments? It is part of what was discussed even in China. IMF and World Bank are looking into what we are doing as a country, and they're extremely happy on where we are. And there are so many things that we use to evaluate an economy. It is not necessarily
what do you mean
that
when you say that we overtook Ethiopia?
In terms of GDP to our debt ratio, of course we've overtaken Ethiopia.
So what is the GDP to debt ratio? What is that? GDP to debt ratio.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like our economy, as compared to Ethiopia, as was ranked by IMF last week, Kenya has overtaken Ethiopia in terms of
what are the figures
of ranking. I'm not sure about the particular figures, but that is what came out of our IMF meeting last week.
Please find that so that
now
we
I will do it in the course of our break, and you should also do it to counter check. Those are some of the things that we must look at, Sam. The noises that you hear here are people who are generally unhappy. No country in the world will want to partner with you if you're a failing country, if you're a failing economy. But Kenya has stamped its authority from foreign direct investments that are coming into the country, and even World Bank and IMF continuing to finance our country tells you that our books are looking good. When I was in China, I sat inside the table where the discussions of financing some of our projects were. And you can tell the excitement of these countries wanting to invest in Kenya. That is how we look at the country.
Okay.
All
right. I was just asking the question because...
So I was telling you that the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta, for me, is a personal issue. It is not that he's speaking for the country. It is not that he's speaking to the young people of this country. He is actually very concerned in making sure that the young people of this country are incited. That is my view of
all right. Never mind that you're speaking to a group of young people from the East African region under the group Guild Leaders. I want us to transition, but Mheshimiwa Kibagendi, I don't know if you have any comments about what Mheshimiwa Koech has been saying, because when I look at the statement of Uhuru Kenyatta on the 25th of June, the night of the killings of Gen Z protesters outside Parliament, he said that as your former president, I have felt the weight and the difficulty of leading Kenya. I therefore pray for wisdom and civility to be established and for peace and progress to belong to all of us as children of Kenya. He also said, dear Kenyans, I stand with you and I ask our leadership to embrace dialogue and speak to the people and not other people. I mean, how do we separate politics from what is right for the Kenyan people?
You know, we have a regime that has depleted creativity. That is why the likes of Honorable Koech are still stuck in what we call blame game. They continually blame either the former regime, empty coffers, and then later the opposition is strangling our development agenda when we were saying no to the taxes they were increasing and housing levy 2023. Later they started complaining about the judiciary, and then later it is the Gen Zs and the people that were sponsoring them. But there's something important I wanted to mention here. When we have the biggest economy in East and Central Africa, my brother Nelson Koech, that does not translate to an improved quality of life for the people of this country. It is embarrassing to speak up with the excitement that we are becoming the biggest economy in the region, yet really our education is in tatters. Our healthcare system is in tatters. We inherited
this education system.
No. While we inherited it, we should have done better. We are regressing. We are regressing.
CBC,
we had NHIF that was functional. Yes, there was some bit of fraud. Now, the fraud is even more. And we have no services. My brother Sam, let me read for you something. Just a sentence, a paragraph. The president of Vietnam Gas and Energy, the president of Vietnam Gas and Energy met, listen to what he said. Why Africa waits while Asia builds? A hard look at Kenya. He said this: I met with the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi and President William Ruto in Nairobi. They spoke with energy about Kenya's future, investment, infrastructure, public housing. But behind the polished language was a painful truth. There is no serious execution culture. Kenya's real problem is not lack of money or talent. It's the absence of long-term vision and dominance of short-term gain. Short-term gain is the greatest challenge we have in this country, where Honorable Koech and the cartels around State House, the president, and in the ministries want to quickly become wealthy, quickly have enough money to manipulate people. And the money they have made through corrupt deals and taking advantage of even stealing our taxes is what they hope to use to manipulate.
Deals?
Corrupt deals. The SHA system is a corrupt deal.
You're in the
housing.
You're in the health committee.
I fought it. I fought it, and Gituku knows.
And he passed it, and he signed it.
I didn't sign.
He did sign it. He did sign the report.
I didn't sign the report.
What
I
report?
didn't sign the report.
What report?
The SHA.
Endorsing SHA before it came for debate
ever.
on the floor of the
Even
House.
here on TV,
Kibageni did sign.
I have even here on TV, I have been consistent about SHA, the system, and even the schemes. Last week, the CS signed that they should start paying for the 10.4 billion shillings a year. I can tell you, I have been very consistent. The housing scheme, it is all corruption. We are enhancing other people's businesses while destroying others. There are no opportunities for people.
Mheshimiwa Kibagendi,
yes.
You sit in Parliament.
Yes, I do.
Over 50 million Kenyans don't.
Yes.
What are they supposed to do?
And that is why I oversight and speak out. I represent. By doing what I'm doing, this is representation. Even in Parliament, I was consistent. What we need in this is change, because Parliament has been taken captive. It has become an appendage of the executive that is pushing their individual short-term gain. The deals, anything you saw in China, these things they are pushing.
Okay.
It is to push for infrastructure development where they have a hand.
So,
that is what they're
allow
pushing
me to respond to
not
Vietnam.
that you're only,
Vietnam, the issue that
he is
you
going
raised
to
about
rubbish
Vietnam. I'm not rubbishing.
someone,
I want to
a distinguished individual.
Just hold it, because I want us to transition to the next conversation, which is about...
no, then we will lose the Vietnam issue. You know,
still on it. It's very related.
No, the Vietnam was. I just want to give you statistics. Allow me, Kibagendi.
You don't have to respond to that.
In 2000, okay?
It is just clear.
Just allow me. In 2000, okay, and this is, I'm talking about Vietnam. In 2000, at that time, Vietnam, with a population of 77 million, okay, just like what it is now in Kenya, they had 3.3 supply gigawatts of power. When we are a population of 50, when they were 77, they were where we are now as a country, 77 million. That is in the year 2000. And you can check that.
And now, that is now what some discovered.
Right now, in fact, they agreed they are importing most of their power from China.
Sorry, I want to hear from Mheshimiwa Koech, because he's making a point that we need to understand.
There's nothing here to understand.
You're saying the power production, the power production of Vietnam was 3.3 gigawatts.
Yeah.
Gigawatt hours.
Yes.
In 2000.
The year 2000. With a population of 77 million people.
What was it for Kenya in the year 2000?
Right now, Kenya is at 3.3 with a population of 50.
Where were we?
Yeah.
What was the production for Kenya?
Where, in the year 2000?
Yes.
No, I'm just comparing the population when they were at 77, and right now when we are 50, we are doing what they were doing when they had a population of 77.
I don't know the place of population and power production.
Yeah.
Also, you're talking about the year 2000, because there must be. And what is it now for Vietnam? How many gigawatt hours? 830. 830 gigawatt hours.
Yeah. Which is importing. They're importing from Laos, 730 megawatts, and from China. Yeah.
So what is the point?
I'm just trying to show you where they were as a country also, just the way it's establishing the country.
They have put in some work.
There are challenges that we all experience as a country, but you should not also... This is a dictator country, first of all, a one-party state.
You know, Mheshimiwa Koech...
Vietnam.
Mheshimiwa Koech, you're saying very interesting things.
Yeah.
So did you find how Ethiopia has overtaken Kenya?
Yes. Kenya overtaking. Yes, it was last week in Daily Business and even in IMF report that Kenya is expected to dethrone Ethiopia as the region's largest economy after Addis Ababa devalued its currency birr. And that is IMF rating,
so what are the
IMF evaluation last week on 25th. This is the daily
What's the significance
of 25th.
What are the figures?
It means that we have been able to hold our currency against the dollar and sustained it.
Now, I'm asking that because the GDP of Ethiopia, the figures as of 2023 was 128.
No, 131. That is 17.04 trillion.
Let me read what I have. For Kenya, it was 108 billion US dollars, 2023. For Ethiopia, it was 163.7 billion US dollars, 2023.
Kenya's GDP is expected to grow and it will expand to $131.673 billion okay, by the end of this year.
Yes, that is.
That of Ethiopia has sunk to $117 billion. That is 15.2 trillion.
That's according to the IMF.
Yes.
Okay.
Reflecting a weakening of Addis Ababa.
We will check that, but at the same time, so Mheshimiwa Koech and others were in China this week. They signed, or they witnessed the signing of several deals. We've been hearing of them. Let me begin with you, Mheshimiwa Kagere, on this one, of what you've learned of these deals, and especially when you have to reflect on, yes, private firms coming on board to put up projects in various counties that are going to bring a bit of job creation, but at the same time, what is in it for Kenya, knowing that the land is yours? What does it mean at a time that you're also referencing the public debt of 11 trillion shillings now?
Some allow me to first conclude what I had to say on the previous conversation. And I would want to say I'm beginning to get very worried about the hypocrisy we are having in this country. I've listened to one of my colleagues here, and listening to his conversation, I found myself thinking, if we all wanted to win in 2027, the first thing is to demolish this regime, complain about it, say nothing is working, and of course the public will want to hear what you're saying. But my question would be, we were elected in the wisdom of our people to serve them between 2022 to 2027. So when someone sits here and complains about all that is not working, are they expecting their constituents to come and do the work for them? So my answer would be, it is us who are elected, we are the leaders, we owe it to our people to ensure health works, universal health coverage works, housing works, our roads are well built, our water reaches our people get connected to electricity. Those are the things we need to do for our people. If I, as Jane Kagiri, wanted to join them and get an easy run in 2027, that's the same thing I would do. So I'd want to mention and say, let us stop being hypocritical. Let's stop lying to our people. It is our time to work and we must deliver to them. That said, Sam, you had also asked something about the former president, whether he was on record saying about our regime. And I remember 2 years ago, there's a forum where he said Raila remains his leader, and 3 months from now, Kenyans will be crying. I wish we'd go back and ask him, what did he mean by crying? Maybe he knew the debts that were there, how much we had to pay, how much we'd never get back to our pocket. Maybe, just maybe, he knew why we would be crying. Maybe one of the questions we'd ask him in his wisdom is to tell us what he meant and how we should have remedied it, or how we should remedy it. But now back to the China conversation. Some, for me, I was so glad that on the list of the deals made in China, none of them was about restructuring our debt. So that means I think we are doing well in our repayment of debt. But that said, I would want to remember a time I visited China in the year 2018. And while there, I needed a translator. And so somebody introduced me to a number of students who are Kenyans there. And what I appreciated about that visit is that I met Kenyans who are aeronautical engineers. I met Kenyans who are practicing to be doctors. I met very high professions of Kenyans there. So for me, when I look at the partnerships that were signed, or the deals that were signed on this particular trip, when I look at deals on blue economy, deals on scientific technology, for those I think they're a great benefit to our Kenyan people. That said, of course, we are in a time where we need investors to come into our country. Anybody would be lying to themselves. If I look at my own county of Laikipia, we had a factory called Mountex, which used to employ 3,000 people. Today, Mountex is gone. I wish I would just get one investor to come back to Laikipia and put up a factory running Mountex.
What is it? What it did?
They did textile.
Mount Kenya Textiles.
Mount Kenya Textiles. So years later, and this must be more than 20 years since Mountex left. I think, in fact, about 30 years, because I was very young by then. I would look at a scenario where I would hope and pray an investor comes to my county. And Honorable Nelson, because you're on that trip, if any of these investors doesn't have a place to come, please welcome them to Laikipia County. Thank you.
Interesting. Mheshimiwa Wandeto, yes, what's your take? Because we've been hearing of it. There's no clarity on how much is an investor/government investment and what is private-to-private engagement.
Yeah, we've all seen the data around the number of MOUs that were signed in China, I think about 24 or thereabout. And for me, the bigger question is a question of debt sustainability. Because as a country, we seem to be taking in more and more debt. The statistics have been given there by Jane as to how debt has grown since Mwai Kibaki's time to now. And Sam, I know you said we are adding 0.9, but my simple mathematics show like we are adding 1.2 trillion per year. And if this government was to be...
How are you calculating that?
You know, because it's been 2 years. You know, let's remove you know, the first few months of a new government. But give and take, 0.9 or 1.2 is still a very high figure in terms of our debt. And we, by some luck, we have avoided a total debt distress. But I think we are heading there unless we improve our fiscal management. And debt does two things, which we need to start thinking about. First of all, any child, even the beautiful angels who have been born this night and have arrived in this territory of the Republic of Kenya, have already inherited a 200,000 shillings debt tag on them this morning. And what this is going to do is two things. First of all, it is going to remove more and more money out of the pocket of Kenyans from a tax point of view because we have to repay this debt, okay? And already, Kenyans are complaining about high taxation. To sustain this debt, I think there's only one way we are going to go. We are going to start either seeing an increase in levies and an increase in taxes to be able to sustain. And even if we don't increase our taxes and levies, the next thing we are going to do is to have to stop almost any new investment in terms of projects so that now we concentrate on paying debts. I think right now we are using about 1 point something. I think the interest alone is upwards of 1 trillion shillings. And for a country that is only able to collect about 2.5, 2.8 trillion in terms of domestic taxes, and everything else has to be funded by borrowing, we are basically digging one hole, using the soil of that hole to cover the next one. And we have to dig another one and another one. And that is how a country slowly goes into debt distress. So when you look at about what happened in China, I saw the extension of the railway, which is a very noble project, a project that was started by Uhuru Kenyatta, extended to Suswa or to Naivasha. There was a lot of criticism. It was not viable. So I'm again surprised the same people who criticize the extension of the railway from Nairobi to Naivasha and even reverse the gains that were supposed to be accrued by doing the clearing in Naivasha now are happy to extend the rail from Naivasha to Malaba. But look, it is coming at a price tag of $4.5 billion. If I got the numbers right. Out of that $4.5 billion, $1.5 billion, which is 30%, has to be financed by government of Kenya. Now, that's almost 200 billion Kenya shillings. The same ticket size as a Eurobond that we nearly recently struggled to pay. And we had to do a lot of machinations, borrow from the UAE, a much more expensive debt to pay a cheaper debt. So I think we need to be...
What do you mean machinations with the UAE?
Well, we had to take a more expensive, debt. We are paying a higher interest rate.
The Eurobond?
Yeah, the arrangement we made to clear the... No, the arrangement we made to clear the Eurobond. What was the arrangement?
I thought it was a Eurobond.
Yes.
Another Eurobond that was taken.
Yes, but who are the main investors? Anyway, that is something we can check.
I don't know, you can tell us.
Yeah, that is something we need to check.
But any investor can invest on Eurobond.
Yeah, but the issue is we have taken more expensive debt to pay cheaper debt. And the more we keep going to these, a lot of these Chinese deals, what Nelson will also tell you, is that they are also on commercial terms. We are leaving cheaper money from IMF, we are leaving cheaper money from World Bank, and we are getting into arrangements where we are forced now to pay 30% from of the rail using our local resources, and this is going to place again a very heavy burden.
Do you believe it is necessary to extend the SGR from Suswa to Malaba?
Exactly, it is very necessary. By the way,
how would you suggest we finance it?
I would suggest, actually, I like the PPP models. Okay. But again, these PPP models, we need to be careful. First of all, if these PPPs are going to be financed by, the railway development levy, which I know we have now increased from 1.5% to 2%, now we have taken additional debt. So the next thing we are going to see is a RDR maybe moving to 3% to 4%, the same way all these levies have been moving up. Why don't we agree that these people come here and fight it out build the railway, charge whatever levy you can, no government guarantee, no picking back on RDL, charge the people carrying the freight and pay for yourself, through that method. But what is going to happen is, what we see happening is a lot of these deals have a lot of government-backed guarantees. You have pledge of assets such as, the Port of Mombasa, and all these things threaten the sovereignty of the country. They threaten, strategic assets of the country. And these are the sort of deals that China has been getting into in different countries. You saw what happened in Sri Lanka, where I think they've lost the port. We do not want to go that direction. So
you have information that the Port of Mombasa is actually a collateral for one of the loans?
It has always been for SGR. It was in the whatever that was released by Murkomen.
Okay.
You can check it out.
Now, Mheshimiwa Koech, because you sat in those meetings, I don't know how much you witnessed, help us, as an insider, help us.
China Sam was a huge success, a very huge success to the country. There are questions that I would really have wished that you had posed to Honorable Wandeto. Number one, I wanted you to ask him, does he think that the Mau Road is a noble project? Does he also think that Thika Road project was a noble project? Does he think that the Northern Bypass was a noble project? Or does he just think that because it is now different, it shouldn't be noble? Because if he's complaining that, we shouldn't borrow more, he should understand that we are even borrowing now to finance the Mau Road. Then probably we should be saying, no, let's stop where where it is, and we don't have to do any more roads. Sam, let me tell you.
Those examples?
No, because I'm just being naughty. Let me just
Nelson, some I think.
Let me just.
This is the second time.
No. Let me just come back to my story. Don't take my time, please. I'll allow you. I don't want him to use my time. Let me just.
Maybe he feels.
No.
I think Sam, I deserve a response on this.
Sam, you'll give him that.
Please allow me, Nelson, because it's the second time that he has started what I would call ethnic profiling in this show.
It was a huge success. Let me go back this way. No.
Talking about projects based on regions and ethnicity.
I think you've made
it is not.
He's saying.
It is not.
He's saying that you're doing it.
I was just being naughty, and that's why I'm saying you should have posed that question.
You're a national leader. You can't be naughty on TV.
You posed the question of SGR. Let me get to the gist of the story.
Road's part of the deals in China.
It is not. I'm just saying, is it a noble project? That's what I'm saying. Look, Sam, the 50-kilometer road, Thika Road, opened up central Kenya. When we went to China, part of the things that we must look at is which one is the most innovative ways, which Honorable Wandeto has even mentioned of them, of making sure that we still can attract investment. We still can attract resources to our country without overburdening the taxpayer. One of those models that he mentioned is PPP. Rironi Mau Summit Road, 175 kilometers. You should be aware that already been given to a French company called Vinci for 3 times probably what China is going to quote. And the model was totally different. What we have right now for 175 kilometers is going to be a PPP model, where tolling policy is going to be applied. So if you're going today to, for instance, Nakuru or Eldoret, I'm told the people who are within the radius of 21 kilometers will not be charged, but the people who go further will be charged. And there will be alternative roads for those people who do not want to be tolled.
What will be the cost?
For what? I'm not sure about the cost because there's no bids that have been submitted yet.
But how did you know it's 3 times more expensive than French?
It is just an MOU.
No numbers.
It is just an MOU that has been signed. And this is, of course, the expression of interest by this point. But, of course, there's another company that is already on the road. So, of course, you can't have...
I think Nelson is poor on facts and statistics this morning.
Sorry, Mheshimiwa.
Do you want to speak for me, Wandeto, or do you want me to speak?
No, because you have said 3 times and then you could not quote the figure.
I have said...
Okay, let him carry on.
China,
by the time...
He was in China, we were expecting to have numbers.
By the time you are closing a deal with the French, of course, there must have been an expression of interest for someone to tell you that, no, look, here you're being conned, this is a better deal that we can give you. And I think... China will, and this is not even about that. Yep. My private business also is construction. I understand the value of working for both countries, the value that you get from working with a European country, for instance, and that of working with China. China will always be the cheapest option for road construction and bridge. Now, This is part of the things that was signed, is a PPP of 175 kilometers. Any person who's used that road to Nakuru all the way to Eldoret will tell you that the suffering that
So please make us understand here. So 175 kilometers, a deal is signed with who?
There's not, it's an MOU to say that they are, you know, China,
MOU with who?
China is willing, Chinese government that, you know, we are willing now
so
to...
the government of Kenya and the government of China?
China is willing now to participate in making sure that investors who want to come to the country will be cushioned by their country of China. Because you must remember that this is not a small investment. It's a huge investment. So any country must be involved. These two countries must be involved in that kind of negotiation because it involves a lot of money.
So when do you identify the contractor?
I'm sure now PPP, now it will check in. There's a PPP. I'm sure when the road is handed over, because there were still issues with the French company that had been given the project. So until it's officially handed over now to the government, which I think is going to happen this week or next week, back to the Ministry of Roads. Then from there, the Ministry of Roads, I'm sure, will invite the bid from China who want to compete for financing of that project.
So did you meet any firms in China?
No. This is a serious discussion between heads of state. So there's no contractors involved at that point.
It's not that.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Now the other contractors will come in at a later stage.
So a Chinese firm is going to hand over the project, a French firm is going to hand over the project to the government of Kenya, Ministry of Roads.
Yes, you remember it had been...
What is the implication?
You remember it had been signed by... it was a private company.
Yeah.
Just
so what
the
is the
same
implication?
Way,
Taking away a project?
Just the same. It's not taking away a project. It's just to say that we feel that this deal was signed at a different time, that this regime was not in, and we feel it is not expensive and not sustainable for our country.
So please remind me, how much was it with the French?
I'm not sure about the numbers.
So,
and I wouldn't want to go to the details of that particular deal at that time. I just want to use this opportunity to enumerate some of the successes on our China trip. Number two, Sam,
before you go on, so if the road is taken away from the French firm,
yes.
What is the cost implication? Because there are contracts that were drawn. There must be exit clauses.
Those are details. Those are administrative.
They are details, but they have an implication on the public funds.
Whatever the implications are, I am sure that implication will be way cheaper than entering into a new agreement with the Chinese. So if it is
not known,
I do not know, because I'm not an authority to speak on behalf of the roads authority, for that matter, Kenya. But I'm just saying, as a layman, and as a person.
As a layman, you chair the defense committee.
Yeah, but I'm saying because these are direct investments. These are people putting their money. These are people who are probably putting in pension fund.
People you do not know, Mheshimiwa Koech.
That's what I'm saying. When it goes to China, an evaluation will be undertaken, Sam. That evaluation will be able to tell us what are the companies bidding and what is the cost. All I'm saying is that, in a nutshell, it is a good deal for the country.
It's a good deal.
Sam, allow me.
Mheshimiwa Kibagende, I'll come to you.
My brother Sam, there is no honor in being in debt.
That is not a debt.
I'm talking about
and no country, Sam, cannot take a debt. Let us go start there first.
Not that specific issue. I'm just saying there is no honor in being in debt. Our continued aggressive borrowing is a demonstration of lack of appropriate fiscal decisions that have been made by this particular regime. And we need to relook at what is urgent and practical. When you're in trouble in your house, you don't have adequate resources. You step back. Instead of using your vehicle to drive to the office, fuel it, pay for parking and all that, you'll step back, put park the vehicle, use public means to get to where you're going. The problem we have with this regime is they want to continue spending because that is how they cut deals and get money that they are going to use to manipulate people in the coming elections. There is no genuine investment here. And I want to take particularly you and the media to task. When the president went to the US, we had huge amounts being thrown at us as Kenyans in the papers, in the dailies, about his visit. And one of your colleagues, Abdikadir, was with him in the US that time. When he said there's this amount of investment and the other and the other. What has become of those investments? Are we being hoodwinked one more time by this regime, the way they hoodwinked Kenyans to get elected? That is what the media should be doing. We should be getting to, when I say we need to do a detailed and exhaustive study on our debt so that we know why are these people strategically avoiding IMF loans and World Bank loans and going for these deals that they cut on the side.
Yes. So the media can do that.
Yes.
What will Parliament do?
We are also doing our part. That is why I'm actually here.
Sam,
and I raise my issue.
Let me
tell you,
the media, you had finished.
No,
you had finished.
Sam, I didn't finish.
The problem we have with...
just give me three minutes. I'll read, actually.
Yeah. If he agrees, I'll give it to you.
No. You'll get your opportunity.
Can I read for you the facts of our China trip? Please.
Let me allow you to read.
Thank you. Thank you for being magnanimous. So these are some of the investments, Sam. And these are FDIs, direct investments by investors. Number one is China Wuyi is going to put $150 million for Kikambala Special Economic Zone. Then there's an investment by Pengfeng. It's going to, this one is good for textile and garment, $150 million. That is in Athi River, for Athi River and a factory in Murang'a. Then there is Rongata Steel, an expansion of R&D in Lukenya, which is an investment of $150 million. It is going to employ more than 7,000 young people. There's an smart traffic component in Mombasa, which is an investment of $50 million, and it is estimated that it will employ more than 5,000 young people. We have poultry and feed, an investment also by a Chinese company called Shandong, an investment of $30 million. It is estimated that it will be creating an employment of 500 people. And then we have an investment of $400 million for a vineyard project in Baringo. And then the final one is an acquisition of hotels, which had been mentioned by the president even when we were there, and leasing. That is Intercontinental Hotel and the Hilton Hotel. Those are some of the...
So before we get back on about Kibagendi, so on that particular question of the Intercontinental Hotel and Hilton Hotel, so what is the deal?
I don't know the details of the deal, but those are the investments. I've told you the company is called Hotian Hotels.
The one on poultry...
There are plans to either acquire it or lease it.
You said you don't have the details. The one on poultry and feed, 3.9 billion shillings, if my calculation is right. $30 million times 130.
Yeah.
What is the deal?
So
what are we doing?
It's for hen laying and breeding factory.
So
feed factory.
We're breeding
almost 500,000 hens. 500,000
hens. From where?
This will be done in Kajiado.
Chicken from where? Hen from where?
Kenya,
eggs from where?
Locally.
And what is the deal?
The deal is that the investor is coming to put in and supply.
So there's land there?
Yes, right? Yes.
Free?
In Kajiado.
Sold? Leased?
Whichever way.
This just sounds like just an investor coming.
Sorry, there has to be...
Of course, but by the time investors are coming into the country, they are showing confidence in your country. Investors just appear.
What I'm asking is, there must be details. I hear it's about 100 acres. Are they to be sold, to be leased, or to be given for free?
I'm not sure the arrangement that they have with the county of Kajiado, for that matter, or even Murang'a.
Was Kajiado represented in China?
Most of these counties had a prior meeting in Kenya before. You remember even Murang'a, I saw on a tweet that Honorable Kangata did mention. Actually, not a tweet, it was on Facebook.
I'm talking about Kajiado. Was it represented in China?
I'm not sure if it was represented.
Agriculture is a devolved function.
I did not see.
Agriculture is a devolved function.
But of course, we had the Minister of Trade. We had our Minister of Trade there, Lee Kinyanjui.
But agriculture
was seated in that meeting.
This gentleman is taking a lot of time, my brother.
On chicken and egg business.
You know, there's a company here he has mentioned, Rongtai. Rongtai is a company whose business license, manufacturing license, was cancelled by KEBS in partnership with NCA. Why? Because they were involved in manufacturing substandard ribbed bars, steel bars in this country. These are the same people we are bringing back through the back door. to come and continue doing business with us. People that have been involved in in unethical business practice. You know, while we push for all these things that we are talking about, sometimes let us try to be realistic. And the numbers they are throwing here, this company will do this kind of investment and employ 5,000 people. A textile industry employing 5,000 people, you know, let us reduce on the regular lies that we have been giving Kenyans. Let me tell you, there is no textile industry here, even a factory that can have 5,000 people walk in, even if they're doing that in shifts.
In Athi River?
It is not possible. It is 300, 400, 600 people per shift. So what we are trying to...
How many shifts do you have at Athi River?
Two shifts.
So 600
The big ones, they take 2 shifts.
Okay.
The very big ones. What we are trying to say is this. Yeah. We do not say government should not look for opportunities for investors to come and invest in Kenya. They should even look for people to give us cheap loans. Yeah, for us to be able to do our development. So we are, however, saying this, can we have targeted loans? And these targeted loans, can we see actual development? If we are saying we are coming to do this particular road, can we quickly ensure that road is actually done? And is it of value at this point?
All right.
Like I said, when you cannot afford to buy grass-fed beef for your family that you regularly use in your house, you can retreat and buy cheap eggs. You'll still have proteins. What we are doing is we continue to sink into debt when we can step back and say, hey, this and this and this can wait for now.
All right.
Can we initially focus on what is urgent and practical?
And you'll tell us what that is. Urgent and practical.
Urgent and practical right now is affordable and accessible health. What we need in this country is affordable food security, and food security is not throwing around numbers
I thought the government is doing something about
cost of unga.
Sheaf and Shah?
Sheaf and Shah is the biggest problem we have in this country now.
All right, Mheshimiwa Kibagendi.
Funding in the university sector or higher education
that has
is
been
something
said
we need
before
to
by yourself. Mheshimiwa Kagiri, what makes it so easy for Chinese investors in Kenya that is so difficult for Kenyan investors in Kenya?
Sam, allow me to pick up from where my colleague left. And it's very unfortunate that we're looking at the cameras and lying to Kenyans. Honorable Kibagendi, may I read to you this. When Mountex, in 1991, Mountex had 1,300 employees, 1991. In the year 2002, when it closed down, it had 3,000 employees who lost their jobs. So when you sit here and speak and trivialize investors in this country, I hear Wandeto speak of hen and chicken business. I hear you speak about impossibilities of employment. I keep telling you.
And I was clear about the numbers.
And I'm very clear about mine too.
That is 3,000, not talking of 5,000. That was the biggest.
And
you know, that was the biggest.
Kibagendi, allow me, it's my time. I'm clarifying your facts and your lies.
But we will not allow you to lie like you have been accustomed to.
Please.
By this
you
regime.
spoke in silence. Allow her to speak in silence.
We should not allow her to lie.
You know, the beauty of our viewers, Mheshimiwa Kibagendi, they're actually listening to both of you. So they remember.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So you said it's impossible to employ 5,000. I'm correcting you and telling you in 2002, when Mountex closed down in Laikipia County, there were 3,000 employees. And that is why I remain very passionate about an investor who would come back to Laikipia County and give employment to my people. That said, Sam, I'm also beginning to worry. When I sit on this panel, I'm wondering, am I the only Kenyan citizen? And maybe Honorable Quiet. Because I hear undertones of disappointment that we are being able to repay our debts. I hear tones of disappointment that we are getting investors. I hear tones of disappointment that the regime wants to do its best to ensure things work for Kenyans. Then I find myself wondering, are we not patriotic enough, or don't you want our country to succeed? That said, Sam, you've asked me about the Chinese versus the Kenyans. And for me, I know many Kenyans, because I was also an entrepreneur at some point, many Kenyans are going through challenges because I still talk to my former colleagues and friends.
Yep.
And of course, we all go back to what we have all explained. The debt situation in this country has run us all dry. We get taxed, this money cannot come back to development, which development would ensure money keeps going back to the contractors' pockets. But where we are at, we don't mind an investor coming as a stopgap measure. Before we could get out of all this debt situation, let investors come into our country, invest, create employment for our people will get salaried. Because some, let's not forget, we all get our money through taxpayers. The more Kenyans get employed, as we keep trivializing these numbers, my 5,000 Laikipians getting employed, those are people who will enter the tax brackets. There are people who will get income for their families. There are people who will get employment. That is human resource. We are increasing the base in this country. So for me, I would keep wishing and wishing that we get as many investors in the meantime who will come to our country and create employment for our people.
But I'm sure, are there people with money in Kenya who can invest in some poultry business? What
some I know, and maybe it may not be as factual as it sounds. I have women groups who tell me Jane gets as one-day-old chickens. I don't know, 14 days, or the young chicks. And when they tell me to try get for them, we'll place orders at Kenchik. And we'll be told it's going to take us 3 months. It's going to take us, the orders are too many. Yeah. For me, that tells me that is over-demand and under-supply situation we're experiencing. So maybe that's the reason why we're having somebody
else. That's what I'm asking. Are there people with resources who can actually put...
No, I would not know how people's pockets look like in this country.
As well.
Sorry?
The banks are prohibitive as well. The initial investment is quite huge.
Okay. Yeah. Mheshimiwa Wandeto, following on that particular question of why is it so difficult for Kenyan businessmen to invest in some of such kind of programs?
That's a very good question. And listening to the conversation what Nelson was elaborating about the China trip, while it is important for us to be out there looking for investors, it is also equally important, and maybe even more important, to come back here in Kenya and talk to our own local investors and business people. I wish the same way we have a high-powered delegation to China, maybe consisting of, I don't know how many you are, Nelson. I believe
very slim number.
I believe you are upwards of 100.
No, less than 20. Actually, there are only 3 cabinet secretaries. Let's be honest sometimes.
The final count probably will come out. But I wish we start seeing similar high-powered delegations visiting Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And the average manufacturer in this country will tell you how he's reeling from the high cost of power, unpredictable power. They'll tell you about how they are dealing with issues to do with high interest rates, which I am happy that Nelson Koech has admitted here, that the only reason we cannot engage in this chicken and egg business is because you cannot even borrow from banks.
We have failed as a parliament.
Okay?
We cannot even... responsibility as members of parliament.
To do what?
Captured
please allow me, Nelson, the same way you requested me to give you a time, please allow me to
Sorry, just an interjection. To do what?
He was talking about the interest rate in banks.
So Parliament has failed to do what?
We need to rein on central bank to reduce their...
Once upon a time, there was a cap.
I know. Parliament. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That is our responsibility.
And it did government borrowing.
As members of Parliament.
It didn't work for the economy.
The problem is government borrowing.
Okay. Some allow me to finish. And just what I was saying, that we hope we can start seeing these sort of high-power delegations to Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I'm not aware of, the president ever having called CAM, to State House, maybe for a whole day consultative
CAM is part of KEPSA.
Meeting. I wish there was meetings with KEPSA, like they are saying. There are associations of small business people. There is the people who are doing EPZ, who are all complaining, and some are even closing shop and going to Vietnam and other cheaper destinations. I wish we are talking to the horticultural exporters, who are all now crying about the high freight costs. So we have some structural issues in this economy that are basically inhibiting both local and even foreign investment. The only thing maybe that we are seeing all these Chinese companies come is because most of them can get maybe very, very cheap credit, and they're also getting very favorable, investment terms, to encourage them. So what we need to do is to address the broader structural issues in the economy. Interest rates, cost of power, reliability of
Did
power.
You contribute to my motion?
Predictable tax regime, whereby people are not worried as to what is refundable VAT, not refundable VAT, and manufacturers are not waking up one morning to find KRA has raided them, has closed them, because maybe you are not computing a tax correctly. So we need to have serious national conferences on how to encourage the small investor, because to be honest, Sam, and I like the way you have trivialized chicken and egg. It's a shame that now chicken and egg.
Who trivialized it? It's you.
You also say, don't we have investors? Don't we have investors who can invest in chicken and egg? Surely, Koech, me and you, we can keep chicken if we can borrow favorably.
Keeping chicken and egg is not two chicken that you keep in your compound, my friend. It is a very serious investment. It is an industry.
If 50 million Kenyans have access to affordable chicken feed, by the way, because if you talk to any chicken farmer, they'll tell you the biggest problem is the cost of chicken feed. You know, so if we, because of taxes and all these other things, if Jane and I, we even kept, to borrow Nelson's example, we all kept 20 chicken. You don't even need more than 20 chicken as an individual, okay? Why are Chinese doing chicken here?
We have closed remarks. I see we are about to
finish. So what incentives are you giving to the poultry farmer in China?
Poultry farmers in Kenya or in China?
In China.
No, the Chinese.
Now that you want the chicken to come from China.
I don't know the deal there that they agreed with the county of Kajiado. Let me say that.
So it's a direct negotiation with Kajiado?
Initially. I think it is an engagement with, those are direct investors.
But Kajiado was not in China.
Not in China.
But I'm telling you, there was a Minister of Trade.
From Kenya, the cabinet of Kenya,
yes,
not
and I'm sure
the
they're engaged,
and
I'm sure, and that is why you even know that they have 100 acres that they are trying to put up chicken. Let me say, Sam, and let me take from what Rabakambila said.
This is a bit specific.
We seem to have a problem as a country that we have investors.
We're running out of time. We just want specifics. And I don't think anyone's...
I do not know the details of the MOUs.
All right, you don't know. So the next question
I'm just giving you
an overview
in those discussions and the agreements that were entered by investors and by the government.
In those discussions that now China has agreed to extension of SGR from Naivasha to Malaba, is there an assessment of the impact of SGR Mombasa to Naivasha on the economy of Kenya?
An SGR is a global phenomenon. Any country that is thinking of moving its population must think SGR, must think railway. That is the only mode of transport.
Is there an assessment of the impact of that investment to the economy of Kenya?
As our population increase, as we try dualing of the highway to Kisumu, for instance, you must also see how cargo and a human will be transported at the same time. Railway is become such a huge phenomenon in our global space that you must...
Which is fine. Global space, you say.
Yes.
Is there an assessment of the impact of the SGR from Mombasa to Naivasha in the Kenyan economy? Yes or no?
I'm not sure, but I've not... Many people have not, because now, if you were to move, for instance, goods from Naivasha, from Mombasa to Nairobi, a lot of it is being used by SGR. But people still want to prefer to use vehicles, because, of course, in terms, you look at employment, those are some of the things.
So what reasoning is there to extend it to Malaba if people are still preferring to use the road?
When you move to Malaba, then it becomes very easy for us to move goods even within the region, to Uganda, for instance.
So you're building it for the region, not for
It is business
Kenyan
opportunity.
news.
It is opening up space and even reducing the moving of population to the cities and moving our economy further down into the counties.
Okay.
So it is opening up the country, and it is a huge, huge thing in my view.
Many questions still remain. I want us to take a look at the feedback that has come to us at Citizen TV Kenya. Sam Gichuku, the hashtag to use is Citizen DayBreak. On what Kenyans are saying. Someone here is saying, Mwashira KE, Kenya's debt to GDP ratio is at 65.7%, while Ethiopia is at 13.7%. He's asking, what is Mheshimiwa Koech's understanding of these numbers? Babu Michael is also saying there is no problem with Kenyans signing development deals with any country. The questions have always been value for money as they intend to expand SGR to Malaba. Remember, there are unanswered questions about the present SGR contract. The next one. Musao, let's start from here. How far are we with the investors who we supposedly backed from the much-hyped USA visit, consistent with what was asked by Mheshimiwa Kibagendi? Lilian Sioi, Member of Parliament, President Ruto's proactive leadership continues to attract high-value investments. The newly signed $823 million deals cover agriculture, tourism, and biotech, creating jobs and boosting growth. Okay. Then Nyakundi, Koech and the Laikipia County MP should explain how the Kenya Kwanza government used the 2.4 billion shilling they have borrowed You mean 2.4 trillion. And which development projects it funded? Recurrent expenditure should not be one of them. You can note that. Samuel Worth, Uhuru had a chance to change this country for better from 2018. He had peace and stability after his handshake with Raila. Instead, the guy borrowed left, right, and center. Did you just call a president a guy? Gosh. The youth will fight for their country, not because Uhuru told them. And Osumo, why does the speech Uhuru gave while in Uganda, was it giving this regime running stomach? Why are we not hearing the lamentations from Uganda, where he even visited the president after the speech?
Good question.
And Sir Nixon Dogura, you say the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. Should not be just a common saying. Current leaders should be in a capacity to empower young people to take leadership roles and inspire them to become more than just followers. Now, when you say that the youth are the leadership of tomorrow, some of the leaders sitting on this panel have been leaders during their youth.
Precisely.
Final thoughts. I'm past time. I start with you, Honorable Kagiri.
Of course, my final thoughts would be to request each one of us to remain genuine to this country and committed to why we were elected. I've just asked my two colleagues here if they contributed to my motion on the cost of electricity. They told me they closely followed. Following is not enough, contributing on in the chamber was what was required. And some I can gladly report that when I tabled my motion, KPLC was making losses of 35 billion. This year, they recorded a profit of 33 billion. That confirming that our cost of electricity will go down, because before what used to happen is the losses were passed on to the consumers. That is an improvement.
But you also agree the cost of power is too high, right?
It's still high, but at least I appreciate that it's not as high as it was earlier. Number two, Sam, let's also be patriotic enough to appreciate that our people need jobs, to appreciate that our country needs to progress, and let's not just speak for political gains for 2027. Thank you.
I'll pick it up from there. Patriotism is not sycophancy. Patriotism also requires that we speak up and tell our government where they are not doing things the right way. And I would like to encourage the young people of this country to actually step up and help provide solutions to some of the challenges the country faces. And one of the biggest challenges we face, especially amongst our young people, is matters to do with drugs and substance abuse. And we are asking Kenyans, it is not a responsibility we can leave to just the government. We all need to get involved in the fight against drugs and substance abuse.
Okay. Mheshimiwa Koech.
I just want to tell Kenyans that our bad days are behind us. Our economy is looking very robust and sound. There's a lot of investment. All the rankings by several analysts, financial analysts, is showing a very positive figure coming into the future. So I want to ask everyone that we join forces in making that sure that we grow our economy, we grow our country, and we become as patriotic as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Finally, Mheshimiwa,
I would like to say that no nation has ever taxed itself or borrowed it into prosperity. So it's very, very important that as a country, we start being a little bit more creative in terms of how we manage our finances. We need to be more efficient, fight corruption, which remains the single biggest problem in this country. And the people making decisions for us today have to remember that their decisions will impact generations to come, and they should not make those decisions based on short-term gain, based on greed. They should make those decisions based on the future, on the posterity of this country. Thank you.
And you're part of those who make decisions in this country.
And I try to make all the decisions I make, especially the decisions I make within my constituency, I always try to think 10, 15 years from now. How will those decisions be interpreted? There are some people here who are making decisions with their stomachs, and it's unfortunate.
Who are those? I don't know them.
We have no time. Yeah, we have run out of time, Sam, unfortunately.
Okay. My name is Sam Gituku. This has been the conversation on Daybreak. See you again tomorrow. Up next is Sporty Monday, actually. Yeah. Bye.